Hello everybody, welcome to the final episode of the Chris Review, where we review people named Chris. As you may or may not have already known, our grand adventure is at last at its end. It's a shame really, it feels like there are so many Chris's we have yet to review, so many mysteries we have yet to truly understand, but today is the day we review our last Chris. A Chris who descended from heaven to deliver us from evil. The hero of our times, Chris Evans. Chris Evans is a great, well-respected actor. He also has a Twitter, so we're going to be taking a look at that. Welcome to the final installment of Twitter Break, where we review our Chris's social media prowess. Hopefully this will give you all a better understanding of who exactly Chris Evans is. I've heard really great things about Chris Evans' Twitter. Hopefully it lives up to the hype. Starting off really good, his profile photo is a very flattering shot of himself, and his cover photo has a cute doggy in it, so that's nice. He's talking about young artists, albums he likes, he's so cultured. The thing we all came to see, however, is arguments with Mark Hamill over who would win in a fight between Captain America and Luke Skywalker. I personally think we would all win. Nothing gives me greater joy in life than seeing Chris Evans wishing a happy birthday to Chris Pratt in the classic dog peeing style. Something tells me separate but equal wasn't scripted. What a meatball! I'm gonna remember that one. Might want to use it someday. Happy birthday. Would an exclamation point have killed you? Any number of emojis would suffice. The only thing missing from this tweet is a period. You better step it up next year, Spencer. The thing I like about Chris Evans is that even though he's generally a pretty nice guy, he still knows when he's being disrespected and doesn't let it pass. Thanks for the ink, Joshua Lord. Does he rule over every Joshua or only a few of them? Okay, this is really interesting. So if you remember back in episode 7, Chris Matthews was a really big Philadelphia Eagles fan. Well, apparently Chris Evans was rooting for the Patriots, so that brings the score to 1-1. I would really like to play this out and see what Chris is rooted for what team, but alas, this show is at its end. Chris Evans, you're my hero. Thanks for helping to send my little boy to sleep. Happy to help, bud. He resisted at first, but I had that headlock clinched pretty tight. I'm really getting the hang of that babysitting thing. Wait, what? I don't get it. Headlock? Oh! I bet I know what it is. It's a joke, but also a really weird and convoluted one. Chris Evans, you get a Twitter score of 5 stars, but we need to address this. It's time to transition into another segment on this show, Joke Explainer. Chris Evans, let me explain your joke. Many of you, like me, will find yourself confused by the structure of this joke. You see, the traditional model of joke telling, which you are probably taught in grade school, is that a joke consists of a setup followed by a punchline. And that fits in most cases, but not all. In 1967, prominent joke theorist Christopher T. Garfield determined that the setup and punchline can be ordered differently to achieve similar but very different effects. For instance, you could have a punchline followed by the setup, in a form dubbed the Garfield, or say 2 punchlines with setup in the middle, setup and punchline simultaneously, or a long stretch of setup with no punchline whatsoever. At its most extreme, you could order your setups and punchlines in accordance with the Fibonacci sequence. This method of joke telling is called fucking ridiculous, but none of these models match what Chris Evans is doing here. It seems like there is no setup or punchline, just a non-stop barrage of violent imagery. You see, we've been approaching this all wrong, because to an extent, these rules that define Western comedic theory are arbitrary. We find these jokes funny because they're what we've become used to, but there are many other ways to view laughter. As you probably already know, Chris Evans is a devout Buddhist, and much of his joke-telling style is influenced by Eastern traditions. Alongside his religious teachings, the Buddha gave another gift to the people of Eastern India, the holy shit cool joke. It's difficult to explain, but it essentially involves using a combination of short exclamations, hyperviolence, and distorted truths to create a statement that can only be described as absurdist. While I consider myself a wise, intelligent, and generally cool person, I simply don't have the cultural background to get such a joke, but as an Eastern philosophy kind of guy, Evans demonstrates a truly global understanding of comedy. Chris Evans has played several roles over the years, but it's safe to say he's best known as Captain America in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. As such, I think we should dive into one of those movies to see what all the fuss is about. Welcome to Film Detective, our cinematic analysis extravaganza. Let's take a look at a scene from Captain America: The First Avenger. Alright, so this movie is wild. The year is 1942. The US is engaged in the ferocious conflict of World War II. But little do they know, the world is being threatened by an even greater menace. They're the super mega Nazis, and they're like 500 times as strong and evil as regular Nazis. They're led by Dr. Washington Redskin, and their logo is a cool hentai skull. But one boy is willing to stand up for the United States. It's Mark Rogers, played by Chris Evans, and he wants to be a soldier. But there's one problem. He's a little baby boy. As Roger Ebert put it, a small bean in a big, big world, which is what makes this scene all the more important, where Rogers transforms into the Man of Steel himself, Captain America. As the scene begins, we immediately start seeing the extent of Chris's acting abilities. He's fittingly very quiet, but you can tell what he's thinking from his facial expressions. Utter confusion. At this point, Rogers doesn't even remember why he's here. Why are all these doctors looking at my naked body? Evidently, there was a bit of miscommunication on the whole Captain America thing, but eventually he starts to speak.
That wasn't so bad.
Remember, it's all in the face. You see that subtle grin? He's being somewhat sarcastic, acknowledging the physical and emotional pain he's going through. Eventually, though, that precious face is taken from us as Tom Rogers is lifted into the coffin of death. While obscured from visibility, Evans's lines are dubbed over by voice actor Bitchel Emerald Frankenstein.
Probably too late to go to the bathroom, right?
His impersonation is spot on, but as the coffin is opened, out rises the newly formed Mr. America. With 4 six-packs and a 3-foot-long penis, Evans's face becomes shocked, like, holy shit, I have a 3-foot-long penis. This variety of expressions makes Dan Rogers as a character feel realistic, and it carries on throughout the rest of the movie. Amazing acting. Of course, Captain America isn't all Evans is known for. He played the Human Torch in the 2005 Fantastic Four movie, and actually around the same time as the first Avenger, he co-starred in the romantic comedy What's Your Number alongside Anna Faris. Anna Faris... For 10 episodes now, I've searched high and low to find the secret of the Chris. But I have it now. All this time it's been right in front of me, and I was none the wiser. But I've finally cracked it. So many disparate clues, all tied together by one last piece. Welcome to the final episode of Theory Corner, where we finally tie this all together. So, Evans and Faris were in What's Your Number? At the time of the film's release, as we know, Anna Faris was married to Chris Pratt. But more on that later. You know that Fantastic Four movie Chris Evans was in? It was directed by a guy named Tim Story, but that wasn't always supposed to be the case. The original director, who actually stepped down during pre-production, was none other than Chris Columbus. In fact, he still ended up being involved in the film as a producer. That's interesting and all, but back to Chris Pratt. In 2014, he hosted the first episode of season 40 of Saturday Night Live. Yes, the very show that made Chris Farley so famous. Later in 2015, he was also a guest on the 690th episode of the Nerdist podcast, hosted by Chris Hardwick. But back to SNL, because that's really the key to all of this. Every episode of the show has a musical guest, which in the past has included both Chris Brown and Chris Cornell. And look at this cold open from season 30. Yup, that's Daryl Hammond impersonating Chris Matthews. But the most unlikely of guests came on the show during season 38, during Weekend Update. That's a cameo by Governor Christie himself. From all of this evidence, I conclude that there are secret plans in the works for the greatest Chris Over event of all time, the Chris Extended Universe. That's right, the Chris Singularity is almost here. Fear the power! Unfortunately, I've found no real connection to Chris Cross. Now that I'm thinking about it, I don't even know why I reviewed him. Wait a sec. I knew it. Final ratings. Body. A good, classic Hollywood bod. Definitely a body suitable for a super soldier. 5 stars. Mind. Evans has been playing the role of Captain America for so long, I swear it's molded him into a whole new being. But he's still starring in other films, and that one tweet was really clever, so I think he's still got a somewhat wide range of abilities. 5 stars. Soul. From his multicultural worldview to his powerful, inspired acting, I've seen a whole lot of humanity in Chris Evans. He has, in a way, even made my soul something greater than it was. 5 stars. My final rating for Chris Evans is 5 stars. Thank you for tuning into the Chris Review. I hope I have, if nothing else, at least somewhat enlightened you on the different qualities of the Chris. And with that, it's been a long time. Chris, I can join you